Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
Finally, England's odyssey around the world of Test cricket has finished with a rather numbing defeat, hasn't it, Simon? 424-run defeat against New Zealand, which is the worst defeat England have ever suffered against New Zealand. So a bit of a sting in the tail of an interesting year in which they've played 17 tests and won 9 and lost 8. What do you think that says about England?
Which Premier League team do England most resemble, do you think? I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, a fatuous thought in a way, but it struck me that the best sort of equivalent in the Premier League are Spurs.
Oh, no, that's my team.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are listening to this would recognise that. They're kind of exciting but vulnerable. You feel they could be better. They possibly at times should change the way that they play or adapt to the way they play, but they don't. They just play in the same way. It's full throttle, and it leaves them vulnerable. And for only this is the first time in Test history that a team has been beaten by over 400 runs twice in a calendar year. Of course, England play a lot of Test cricket, a lot more than anybody else. They lost in Rajkot in February by over 400 runs as well. So huge highs, but also quite big lows as well. And is anything going to change in 2025? You wouldn't think so, would you? It's going to be full throttle cricket. England say, well, kind of that's the way we play, that's the way we go. Any regrets? No. On we go, basically, isn't it? That's the philosophy.
And it's very much indicative of the captain, isn't it? That's how Stokes lives his life and wants to play cricket. And probably Brendan McCullum the same, really. I mean, you think back to McCullum when he batted for New Zealand. There was that game at Headingley in 2015. He came in and hit his first ball over extra cover for 6, batting at number 5. He just plays cricket as Stokes does 100 miles an hour. And there are times when things break or go wrong because there's no sort of caution, is there? Caution is thrown to the wind, and therefore things go wrong at times, and they go quite badly wrong, don't they? I don't think they care about it. I mean, it was quite interesting listening to Stokes at the end of the match today, which of course he didn't bat in. He decided that his hamstring wasn't worth risking, so he didn't even change out of his training.
Very sensible, very sensible.
Yeah, very, very sensible. I mean, there's no point in going out there with England needing over 400 to win. But he basically said, I've got no regrets about the way we've played. I've got no regrets about the way we put them in this test. And we've won the first 2 games, and we've won the series, having seen New Zealand beat India in India only just before. So that's a triumph, and they've won the trophy. A nice presentation at the end of the match, the Crow-Thorpe Trophy, made actually using some bits of their bats, I think, isn't it? Sort of a wooden trophy, rather nice, touching moment to remember those 2 great players, Martin Crowe and Graham Thorpe. So he's come away with the spoils, Stokes, and that vindicates a lot of the approaches that England show.
Yeah, and I suppose it would have been the other way round. Imagine that England, say, lost this Test match and it had been the first one, or it had been the second one, and then you win the third one by the way they did, the 8 wickets and over 300 runs, then you have that sort of feeling of a high at the end of the tour. But I suppose there's a bit of an anticlimax, but it was a dead game. England went to New Zealand, they did what they intended to do, or tried to do at the start of the series, which is win the series the first time since 2008, and they played some really good cricket in the first 2 games, but they showed their vulnerable side in the last game. And their record in the year that you mentioned there, 1-9 lost 8, kind of sums them up, doesn't it? So they go into 2025, but we just don't know what they're going to come up with when they come up against India and Australia. But 2 pretty significant tests coming up, and the stiffer one of the 2 almost certainly will be Australia in a year's time, as England try to win the Ashes down under for the first time in well over a decade. Actually, as we've said before, try to compete as well for the first time for well over a decade, because they haven't competed really in Australia. Yeah, they've been blown aside, completely annihilated in the last 3 series down there.
Yeah. So actually, we should just consider, given the opposition coming up for England, not for a while, obviously, not for 5 to 6 months, but India and Australia, who are busy in an encounter of their own at the moment at the Gabba. And some quite interesting developments in that third Test match, actually. And they're on the fourth day, so quite difficult to get a result, especially given what's happened in the last hour or two.
Well, dramatic end of the day's play where India were battling to avoid the follow-on. Akashdeep and Jasprit Bumrah together, they needed 33 runs to save the follow-on with the final pair together, and they managed to do it. And there were celebrations in the Indian dressing room. So Virat Kohli gave Gautam Gambhir, the coach, a high five, big smile on his face from the captain Rohit Sharma, and that's a significant battling achievement for India. It does sort of rather reminiscent of 2005 when Australia were celebrating a draw at Old Trafford. And of course the game's not drawn yet. India still have some work to do, but they've gone a long way to saving the match. The forecast for the final day at the Gabba, not particularly good. Some rain in the afternoon, so that might take some more overs out of the match. I mean, you can see one scenario where Australia take the last wicket quickly, have a lead of 190, rattle up a quick 140 and say to India, right, here's 2/3 of a day, half a day, look at 350 and see whether they can put some pressure on. Bit of a long shot in terms of an Australian victory, not absolutely impossible. For example, earlier in the World Test Championship cycle, we saw India really take the running in a game against Bangladesh where there'd been lots of rain. They managed to win the match. So it's up to Australia to sort of force the issue, really. One thing, no Josh Hazlewood, so it looks as though he's out of the series. Calf injury in the warm-up, bowled one over, bowled a horrible long hop to Rahul. It was hit for 4, completed the over, went off. And so a year away from the Ashes, or just under a year away from the Ashes, two key players in the series are both picking up injuries, not consistently, but they've had reoccurrences. I know Hazlewood's had a side injury, now a calf injury. Ben Stokes a couple of hamstring injuries. It's a tough job bowling, isn't it? It's a tough job bowling international cricket, especially when you've got those miles in your legs, those years in your body.
Yeah, it is. And I think I just worry with Stokes in particular because, he said after the match today that there's going to be no holding back. He's going to be going at it full ball as soon as he's fit again. He's going to try even harder to get fit than he did last time. Actually, I remember there was a period, do you remember, in about 2016, 2017, when he was driving himself to absolutely, so he was so committed to his training that he would, after nets had finished, he'd be running around the boundary for an hour and a half.
Go to the gym, yeah.
Go to the gym. And, it was an obsessive fitness drive he was on. And actually people had to say to him, look, you've got to slow down a bit because you're not going to have enough left in the tank to actually play in the matches if you're going at it full ball all the time. And it was Trevor Bayliss, who was the coach at the time, who just took him aside and basically said, look, just when you're at training, when you're at nets, just do it at 70% intensity. Don't go at it full bore. And he did. He listened, and that's probably the most successful period of his career, which culminated, of course, in England winning the World Cup and then that amazing Ashes Test in 2019 at Headingley as well. And, at that stage, remember that Headingley Test? I mean, he bowled, I don't know, how many overs did he bowl? So 12 overs off the reel or something. And then he played that amazing innings. And at the time, he was really fit. And I think it's because he didn't overdo it in practice. Whereas now, he's on this mission to get fit again, having had that layoff after August. And I just think actually he's got to kind of just calm down a bit, really, and just let his body recover a bit more naturally, because he does put it under so much pressure when he plays. And maybe even when he plays, he's got to work out times when it's, he's got to go for it, and other times when he's got to just rein back a bit, because otherwise things are going to break again. Or maybe he's just not capable of doing that. Maybe he can only go at everything 100%. And that he doesn't know any other way.
I mean, it has that feel, doesn't it? When you played, Yoz, were there days when you just had to sort of cruise through the day?
Yeah.
You just bowled at, 62 miles an hour rather than 75 miles an hour?
Yeah, I mean, there are days. Oh, very funny. Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it varies really. And the thing is, we said this yesterday, the thing about Stokes' bowling is it does require this ultra commitment for him to get the ball down at that particular speed, 82 miles an hour or whatever. And he does, hammer his front leg down much harder than some bowlers. Therefore, it does make his body more vulnerable. Whether he could find a way of just coasting to the wicket, that sometimes you just got to coast. You can't put your body through that extensive workload all the time, and you've got to try and look after yourself a bit. And yeah, you have got days where you just glide to the wicket and try and do a job and save a bit more for later. But I don't know if he is able to do that really.
It's interesting just listening to Mitchell Santner in his post-match interview saying, the way we play, and he was talking about that last wicket partnership, actually, that he had with Will O'Rourke, and he said, when we're out there as batters, we're just looking to put miles into the bowler's legs and wear them down a bit. And of course, one of the issues in this game for England is they had that quite intense first day where they just bowled the seamers all day. Yeah. Then they had that hour which we discussed in an earlier podcast. You can go back and listen to that, where it felt as though they kind of took the wrong options right at the start with the new ball. Didn't try to get Santner out, so that was another hour into the legs. And then they batted for 35 overs, so you're out there again. So most of the time you've got a chance to put your feet up, haven't you, for 100 overs or something like that, or 80 overs or 120 overs or whatever it is. But with England, often because of the way they bat, their innings are very short, so that turnaround time for the bowlers is quite. There isn't much time to turn around and rest up, and you'll know from playing, and anyone who's ever bowled a lot of overs knows that you do have that feeling of, oh God, here we go again. I felt like I was only bowling about 5 minutes ago, and I'm out there again.
No, I think it's a really valid point, and so much time and energy and research is invested in England. In all teams really on the science side, and obviously for getting yourself in the right conditions. Getting yourself in the right condition physically, but also mentally as well. And I know that some teams have looked into, and I know England have in the past, how important sleep is, and to get the right amount of sleep to enable your athlete to perform at his or her best. There's an optimum amount. Well, rest and sleep are synonymous, aren't they? Really, and I bet there hasn't been much research done about the importance of bowlers having time off and enabling a day of just relaxation and not bowling. They don't get that, do they? These guys, and it sounds obvious, but it's something I think they need to think about more, to give the bowlers more time off, because they are going to get exhausted and they are going to get injured, and the batsmen are not looking after them well enough. So the whole Bazball approach, which is incredibly exhilarating and fun and great to watch, isn't necessarily the best for the team overall.
I suppose one thing you could say about the back-to-back test matches that are played quite a lot these days, they come in quite short spaces of time, is that with the way England play, the games finish in about 3.5 days, so you often get a day and a half extra off between the test matches. But the games themselves can be quite intense. This was quite an intense game for the bowlers, and in the end, of course, what happened is England just didn't bother bowling their pace bowlers towards the end of New Zealand's innings, or a large part of New Zealand's innings. They didn't bother bowling them. They just bowled part-time bowlers. Bethel, Brook took the new ball. Bashir bowled a heck of a lot of overs and was getting pasted around Seddon Park. So it wasn't worth the gamble, because they bowled a lot in the year, they bowled a lot in the game, so there's not a lot to gain from bowling them. The likes of Atkinson and Cars, and the one they did bowl was Potts, and of course he hasn't bowled that much. Well, he hasn't bowled at all in the series until this Test match, so he's a little bit fresher. Yeah, it isn't. It's this idea of what is the best way to attack. I mean, sometimes the best way to attack is to defend, if that makes sense. So if you bat for a long time, wear the opposition down, I mean, that has such a huge effect on them, and that can be a massive positive as well. We saw England in that hour where they didn't attack, they defended. So they are prepared to defend sometimes. On that the first hour of the second morning, where they just sat back and put everyone on the boundary. That was, you could say that was quite a defensive tactic. The attacking option there would have been early up on against Santner to have the field up and try to knock him over and just finish off the innings really quickly. I mean, that's what's so interesting about the game, isn't it? There's so many different ways of playing it and approaching it. And you think, actually, yeah, full bore, attack's the way to go. That's always the best option, and that's the way we play. But there is a part where defending can have significant benefits for you. I mean, I just on that, backing up, coming bowling after you've bowled a lot, with a short gap in between. I mean, we see it in a different sort of sport, but there is an intensity to bowling that is kind of comparable with football. The footballers now are playing twice a week, every week, and the injuries are racking up. We're just about to go into the holiday period with football. Some clubs have got 5 games in 10 days or whatever. I mean, it's ludicrous, and there'll be lots of injuries. The games won't be very good because the players won't be able to put everything in. Okay, if you've got big squads, you can rotate, but it is an issue, isn't it? Rest and recovery are important things. People say, "Oh, they're well paid. They're really well paid." You can't pay a body to be rested and well soon after you've last played, can you?
I think it was Guardiola who said when Man City were in the middle of that appalling period, which they're probably still in it, in fact, but at the start of it, when they'd lost about 4 in a row, and he said, "I've only got 13 fit players, and one of them had gone off injured in whichever game it was." So. It does show it affects all sports. I just, where do England go with this? I don't think they're going to change, are they? I mean, as you say, the answer is to have a battery of fast bowlers that you can rotate, and.
Well, that's what they're moving towards, isn't it? They're trying to move towards it, aren't they? But then you have this plan. You have this great plan where you've got 6 fast bowlers or 8 fast bowlers or 10 or whatever, and then at any one time, half of them are injured. That's the nature of the game, isn't it? Really.
And of course, it is the contrast. Just to bring in our sister site, actually, briefly, because we're running at the moment our special exclusive podcast series on the 1974-5 Ashes, and which England only took 5 fast bowlers for 31 matches in a long tour.
And that was considered a lot, amazingly. If you look back and read the literature around the series, that was considered a lot. Oh, they brought all these fast bowlers. Do they need them all? I mean, it's incredible, isn't it, actually?
Anyway, that series you can find if you go to our sister site, the Analyst Plus, which is at patreon.com/theanalyst25. And it is a £3 subscription for that site, but we're going to be putting lots more content on there. So it's well worth having a look. Patreon.com/theanalyst25.
And we have another episode out this week looking at the 3rd and 4th Test matches, actually the rest of the series, as Australia move towards regaining the Ashes.
So going back to today's play, and I suppose what we're looking at, talking about England generally, everybody's saying, well, lots of people are saying, including me, that you need 4-day Test cricket. That will work the best, 4-day Test cricket, because it works in the schedules. If you start on a Thursday and finish on a Sunday, then you have 3 days off, then another Thursday start. It just feels more a sort of natural pattern and an easier thing to schedule. That's something I've recommended in the past. I know it irks a lot of people because they believe that 5-day Test cricket is the best form of the game, and you should have 5 days available. It's not going to happen to make it into a 4-day Test idea. That's not going to happen in the near future. But the players are making it work, aren't they, by playing especially England, playing this rapid brand of the game where games often end in 3 days. So they're sort of voting with their own approach in a way as to what the future of the game should be. But actually today, England's batting initially wasn't so Bazball-y, was it, actually? I thought Root, resuming at 18 for 2, Root and Bethel played nice, fairly old-fashioned style Test cricket for a while. It was good to watch.
What do you mean, the 88 runs in the first hour, Yoz? But I agree. I know what you mean. I agree with you. There was nothing particularly extravagant.
There was no extravagant,
yeah. No, they played some nice shots. The fields were attacking. They scored fluently and made good progress. They put on a 100 partnership. Root was dropped at slip by Latham off Southey, one that just took him by surprise a bit, and yeah, Latham put another one down, but it was never going to be costly today. Just on 4 days versus 5 days, of course, New Zealand, in a way, well, they batted on yesterday to get 650 because they knew they had those 2 days to spare. They knew there was no let off for England, so England were faced with over 2 days and 650, and it was that pressure that, in a way, not quite forced England to play the way they did today. But there was no attempt to, if they'd only had 1 day left, England might have tried to play out for a draw today. Do you see what I mean? There's no way they were going to chase the runs. So the fact there was an extra day in the back of your mind means it's much less likely to be a draw. It's more likely to finish in 4 days because it feels futile to try to bat out for 2 days or chase 650. Do you understand what I mean by that? Actually the extra day produces the result, even though you don't need it.
I wonder if we're ever going to get to that stage again. I was just thinking back to one of the first Test matches I covered on, which was then on mobile phone listening mainly. It was Cricket Call. I don't know if you recall that.
Yeah.
Before you probably became a radio.
No, I remember being involved in Cricket Call, Yoz.
In the 80s,
yeah,
where you'd commentate at a game and then it was fed to your computer or your phone or whatever.
Your phone.
And I commentated on I think it was the 1987 Pakistan-England Test match at the Oval, in which Botham and Gatting blocked out for 4 hours. Both of them I think got 50 in about 4 hours. Just they were blocking the Pakistani spinners, and England managed to save the match literally by scoring no runs. There have been occasions when someone like A.B. de Villiers has done that as well, hasn't it? Isn't it, in the past, saving a match by just blocking for several hours at a time? But those days seem to be gone.
Yeah, look, I think that was the fact that England had over 2 days of batting to do and 650. I mean, it just made the whole thing futile. There was no way they were going to escape. But they played nicely for an hour. Bethel got some decent runs, didn't he? But then it all just went pack of cards. And if you make a highlights reel of the wickets, whereas if you just watch them, chop them up really close together. I mean, it does not look like a side trying to.
It's a horror movie.
Well, in a way it is, but you can understand the context. What are we supposed to do? Anyway, they all perished in remarkable ways, or most of them perished in remarkable ways. Joe Root got out by the left arm spinner again. Mitchell's it's happened a few times this winter. There was a time when Joe Root against left arm spin, you thought they're never going to get him out. I can think of Embal Denia of Sri Lanka bowling to him, and he just got a double hundred in Sri Lanka on those slow turners. But yeah, he does get out to the left arm, and I did in Pakistan as well. And Santner bowled a very kind of full ball, which he went to sweep. And he missed it, struck him on the pad. It's a really difficult one to give out, I think, on the field. New Zealand reviewed it, and it was straightening and hitting the stumps, and Root was on his way. I think once Root was on his way, the game changed a bit, didn't it? And Stokes wasn't going to bat. Pope was in at 6. He was playing a few shots. Bethel was playing a few shots. And in the end, it was all a pack of cards. I mean, I've just got a quick list of the dismissals. Bethel was caught at deep third, slicing down to deep third. Pope... reverse ramp bowled by Henry. Cast charged his first ball. Atkinson was caught at deep extra cover. Potts was caught long off early on, and then Cast was stumped. But before that, so those were all dismissals. Before that, there was one thing we really should highlight. That ball that got Harry Brook from O'Rourke. I mean, O'Rourke only picked up 1 wicket, but again, he bowled a serious spell, didn't he? He bowled like the wind, and the bounce was a bit variable. What a delivery. That was a great contest when O'Rourke was bowling. Fabulous ball. And you go back to 74-5 yards, which we've been talking about in our special podcast series. That was the sort of deliveries that Thompson was bowling and Lilly, and they had no helmets and little protection.
And actually, I was very impressed by the way that Jacob Bethel handled it, actually. I mean, he did the limbo dance a couple of times, swaying out of the way and dropping to his knees. Oh, to have a lovely, flexible body like that, getting out of the way.
That's why you still do your spin classes, Yoz, isn't it?
Well, I wish. But actually, also, he rode the bounce occasionally. When the ball, it's so difficult when you're bowling at that pace. And, he does, as I said yesterday, he does remind me of Morney Morkel. And probably he's a bit quicker than Morkel was, actually. And he gets that steep bounce from not very short. And he got a couple into the ribs and into the sort of neck area of Bethel, but who played it very well, managed to keep it down, didn't look too discombobulated by the experience either. He was quite enjoying it clearly. Then he was able to sort of withstand that spell. And actually hit some one or two fantastic shots. He hit Matt Henry for a huge six over mid-wicket when he dropped short, which meant miles. And, some other lovely shots, some drives through the offside. I mean, he does really look a class act. I totally take back what I said at the start about him being ludicrously out of his depth at number 3. He looks to the manner born, actually, at number 3. And he played a beautiful innings, made 76, then caught at deep cover. Tim Southey's last Test wicket, 391 Test wickets for Tim Southey. His last one caught deep extra cover, but a good scalp to get as your last Test wicket, because I think Bethel's got a big future as a Test player.
Yeah, just on Southey, 34,000 balls in international cricket, 776 wickets. I think it became fairly clear in the series, and that England felt he was quite hittable. I mean, they were just giving him the charge in this innings, weren't they? I mean, I think Duckett was down the pitch giving him the charge. Bethel was trying to smash him as well. Anyway, a fantastic career from Tim Southey that's come to an end with a crushing victory for New Zealand. So kind of bittersweet, exciting to have all those memories and be involved so deeply in New Zealand cricket and their successes in recent years, but all good things come to an end, and it's probably time to move on. So so actually Bethel departing to Southey, but there's an emerging player as one departs the scene.
Yeah, and Southey's first Test, I think Michael Vaughan was captain of England, so it shows how long he's been going, doesn't it? 2008 is his first Test. It's been a fantastic career, and just tremendous to be able to play all formats as well. Whereas, Jimmy and Broady, for instance, were spared ODIs and T20s from about 2014. Southey's played all formats, and he's got something like 770 wickets in all competitions.
776,
yes. Yeah, which is amazing, isn't it? And the first New Zealander to get over 100 wickets in all formats, 391 in Tests, about 200 in ODIs and 100 in T20. So a fantastic career of someone who, is quite a simple bowler, really. I mean, there's not any real frills to Tim Southey. He has an easy run-up. He looks to mainly swing the ball away from the right-hander and just bowls a sort of scrambled seam delivery, which looks as if it's an outswinger and goes straight. And actually, that's it. That's all he does. But it's been incredibly effective for, 16 years?
Yeah. Ollie Pope, discuss yours. So he got himself to 17.
Listen, David Gower actually on commentary summed it up beautifully as he saw him walk off, having played that reverse ramp, bowled up top of off stump. Gower just said, well, as one word springs to mind here, why? And there isn't really any answer to that, is there?
Well, yeah. Look, it was a futile exercise for England today. They were never going to save the game. They were never going to win it. There was only going to be one result, just a question of when the game was going to finish. I suppose for someone like Ollie Pope, don't play that shot in a vital situation in the Ashes or against
get it out of your system at Hamilton in a nondescript match, which doesn't matter. So, I mean, maybe we should just look at, England's humbling defeat, 424 runs, but how have they done overall? Where does it leave them in the World Test Championship? It leaves them in 6th place, still way down. Australia, South Africa and India occupying the top 3 spots. South Africa on top, actually, with 63 at the moment. Australia in second with 60 and India with 57 points. England way down in 6th place with only 43 points. And just looking at England's performances over that cycle, so it's pretty much a 2-year Test match cycle, who've been the winners and losers. Well, certainly from the batting point of view, no surprise to hear that Joe Root has been the leading run scorer for England with 1,968 runs in 22 tests at an average of 54. Bethel, average-wise, is second with 52, but he's only played 3 games, of course. He's averaging 52 after 3 tests, so that's encouraging. Harry Brook averaging 50 in that cycle in 17 matches. So it's been a good experience for him. And the only other one averaging over 40 is Jamie Smith, interestingly, averaging 42 with his 9 Test matches so far. And then you go down to Duckett, Crawley, and Stokes, averaging in the 30s. Pope, interestingly, averaging 31. So of the 4 sort of batters, or, main batters, Duckett, Crawley, Stokes, and Pope, Pope is the lowest average there. And then on the bowling front, just before we sort of discuss it in more detail, Carse, 27 wickets at 19. So that's brilliant. Chris Woakes has come out of it pretty well. 51 wickets at 21, most of those obviously at home. And obviously Gus Atkinson, impressive as well, 52 wickets at 22. So very good from him. And then you go down to the likes of, Matt Potts hasn't played too often. Spinners, Stokes, 16 wickets at 35. And I looked at Stokes' performance this year, 13 Test matches, batting average 28, bowling average 36. Sort of a fairly modest year for him. And, the player that we often talk about, Shoaib Bashir, he's taken 49 wickets since his Test debut at an average of 40. So he's taken wickets, economy 3.75, so he's conceding, close to 4 and over. So he hasn't been a person that so far England can rely on to hold an end up. But he has taken wickets, and he's obviously a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah, plenty of stars England have got, haven't they? Plenty of stars rising as well, but also holes in the team. I think that's the issue as they go into 2025. There are issues around this team. The spinner, the top of the order. What about Ollie Pope? Ben Stokes' his fitness, and to some extent general form as well. So those are some of the issues that England have got for 2025. On the plus side, Carse, Atkinson, Harry Brook, Joe Root keeps on going, Jamie Smith as a newcomer. Do you need, though, to be successful next year? You need a lot more from many more players, don't you? You need that overall contribution in 2025 for England to be successful. Otherwise, you think it will be another year like this one, where you lose as many games as you win, or possibly against India and then against Australia, possibly losing more games than you win.
I'm just going to.
Right,
I'm just going to stop that for a sec. I'm just going to put something. I just want to look at something up quickly. I'm just going to pick up on something. One sec. Right. Just hold on one sec. I'm just going to. Yes, to pick up on that, what are England going to do in the future? I mean, obviously the opening pair wasn't a concern, with Crawley and Duckett producing a lot of 50 and a number of 100 partnerships sort of 6 months to a year ago, and being a very consistent opening pair. But in the last few weeks, it has been disappointing, that opening pair. And obviously we know about Zach Crawley's struggles generally. He's finished up in this series averaging under 9 in 3 tests. His place is definitely going to come under threat. And people saying with Jacob Bethel's emergence and Jamie Smith to come back into the team in due course, how do they fit everybody in? What's going to happen to Pope? What's going to happen to Crawley? I mean, one solution, which I couldn't even contemplate 2 weeks ago, could be Bethel could open. And he looks so comfortable against pace bowling, and just looks like he has a lovely method, and he's very composed. He could easily do it. Of course, what he needs to do is get some experience and open the batting for Warwickshire. And there have been a lot of people saying, well, why didn't he get more opportunity, given the talent he's exhibited in this series? Why didn't he get more opportunity at Warwickshire to bat higher up the order? And, he'd been batting at sort of 6 and number 5 and number 7 consistently for Warwickshire over the last year. And I was actually just looking at some of Warwickshire's matches last year to try and explain why he hasn't had more chance. And if you look at, say, a typical match, Warwickshire against Surrey in the Vitality County Championship at the Oval last summer, May, and you look at Warwickshire's batting order, Yates, Davis, Rhodes, Sam Hain at number 4. So those guys, those top 4, are all set in stone really, and they've all made runs early season. Davis had made a double hundred somewhere, and Yates and Rhodes had all made hundreds. Then you've got Dan Mosley at number 5. Well, I mean, he could certainly be shifted down. And Ed Barnard at 6, and then Jacob Bethell coming in at 7. Well, gradually, as the season wore on, Bethell eased his way above Mosley and Barnard, but he was still only at number 5 because of that top 4 that Warwickshire have fielded for some time. And so it does make it hard for a young player, despite their talent, to make moves in county cricket, because counties have got a sort of set batting order that has been working, and it's hard to just disrupt that for somebody who comes in, sort of from the ether, who's young and talented but doesn't necessarily have the track record.
The other thing as well is when he did have his chance, he didn't score that fluently, did he? He didn't score a big number of runs. He didn't make those eye-catching scores. He hasn't made 100. I mean, okay, it's much harder to make 100, say, if you're batting at number 7. Obviously, it's much easier if you've got more time if you're batting at number 5. Yeah. Look, he's a talented player, isn't he? And he probably might flourish more in the next couple of years batting at number 5 as well. I mean, like probably most of this England side, Pope, Brooke, Bethell, Smith, you feel in a way number 5 is, what position to bat in? I can, the new ball's gone, I can attack, I can play my game, and you might really flourish. But of course, someone's got to bat 1, 2, 3. Joe Root's locked in there at number 4. So is Bethell a number 3, or is he? Would he be even more successful at number 5? But he's shown enough attributes, hasn't he, to think, well, look, must needs. If there is a problem at the top of the order, then he is a potential solution to that.
It's funny, isn't it, how averse the top players are to bat at number 3. I mean, credit to the likes of Ricky Ponting, Raul Dravid, and others who stuck it out at number 3 and totally committed to batting in that position. But Joe Root has never particularly wanted to bat at 3, and he has done it obviously, but he does like to bat at number 4. And you look at Steve Smith now, and Steve Smith he's had a go at opening and thought, sod that for a Mugs game, I'm going to go back down to number 4. So that number 3 spot has always been that kind of problem position for teams, and in a way the best teams in the world, the greatest 2 Test teams in the world in the last 50 years, West Indies in the 1980s and Australia in the 1990s, really, they had a solid number 3, if that isn't an understatement, with Viv Richards with the West Indies and Ricky Ponting with Australia. And that is, you can build your whole team around that. I always remember Michael Vaughan saying when he batted at number 3, you can sort of you can control the game at number 3. You might have to come in at 10 for 1, or you might come in at 100 for 1, and you've got to be adaptable. But that number 3 is such a kind of rock around which you can build the rest of the order and the rest of a total. And you need someone there that you can rely on.
The other thing about those teams as well is that they had very good openers, which makes a difference as well. Greenwich and Haynes, and then say Hayden and Langer. They also had some very good bowlers as well, and that's what you need for success. You need good batters and good bowlers, Yoz. Who would have thought it?
Well, what a revelation! At the end of this podcast, we've told you something that you already knew.
Right, so
how do we finish? I mean, I think so. Overall, I mean, thank you, England, for giving us lots of entertainment over this Test match year. But in a way, what do we give them, do you think, as a mark, given that they're 6th in the World Test Championship? What do we give them? B?
Well, I think
B minus? B plus?
You give them 2 marks. You give them 10 out of 10. You give them 0 out of 10, because that's what they are, aren't they? They are sort of a 10 out of 10 side, some matches, and a kind of 1 out of 10 matches on other occasions. I mean, this was a bit of a 1 out of 10, wasn't it, really? This was a bit of a 0 out of 10 match, whereas the previous 2 games, I mean, they played excellent cricket. Those are I'm going to give them 2 marks at the end of the year.
I think your word, actually, that you used yesterday, mercurial, is a good word. because they do pull out some astonishing performances, and then suddenly they plumb the depths as well. So
they're Spursy. That's what they are.
yes, they
England
are,
are Spursy.
as you started saying. Exactly. Oh dear. I mean, I wish they were the Spurs of the 1970s when I supported them anyway, where they were actually very consistent and incredibly exciting and won. Won lots of cups and things. England haven't won anything. Well, they've won series, haven't they? They've won 3 out of the 5 series this year, and obviously that's one objective achieved. They still haven't really delivered. A lot of the Indian and Australian fans will say, "Well, you haven't beaten us in our home territory," and that's some conquering still to be done.
Yeah, haven't beaten them at home as well. England haven't won the last 2 Ashes series at home. They didn't beat India at home last time round. I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? Like, everyone knows the rock hard year that's coming for England next year. India at home, Australia away, another cycle of the World Test Championship. And that's the other thing. Final point. This England side, you feel, should be good enough to be competing for a place in the final. Not necessarily making the final, but they should be good enough to be competing. You could say they're a little bit hamstrung and they play more games. Right? So some of the other teams, South Africa, for example, if you win enough, and you have probably the right matchups as well with who you play, then that can help you. And South Africa might have benefited from that. So England play a lot more games, and India away is a difficult series. Although New Zealand went there and won 3-0, so it is possible, and New Zealand showed that. So I think just say a quick reminder of our series, and then say goodbye, yours.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yes, okay. Well, we'll leave you with that thought. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, here is
we will be back next week. It's Christmas next week, Oz. Why don't we just say we'll leave you with that thought. Just a reminder of our podcast series.
Okay,
Bye for now.
Yes, okay. Well, we'll leave you with that thought, and just a reminder that our series about the 74.5 Ashes is on our sister site, patreon.com/theanalyst25. Thanks for listening. See you later.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.